Why do bad things happen to good people? 1. Why then do bad things happen to good people? One reason is that our being human leaves us free to hurt each other, and God can't stop us without taking away the freedom that makes us human. Human beings can cheat each other, rob each other, hurt each other, and God can only look down in pity and compassion at how little we have learned over the ages about how human beings should behave. This line of reasoning helps me understand that monstrous eruption of evil we speak of as the Holocaust, the death of millions of innocent people at the hands of Adolf Hitler. When people ask, where was God in Auschwitz? How could he have permitted the Nazis to kill so many innocent men, women, and children? My response is that it was not God who caused it. It was caused by human beings choosing to be cruel to their fellow men. In the words of a German Christian theologian, Dorothy Zerle, speaking of attempts to justify the Holocaust as God's will, who wants such a God? Who gains anything from worshiping him? Was God on the side of the victims or on the side of the executioner? To try to explain the Holocaust or any suffering as God's will is to side with the executioner rather than with his victim, and to claim that God does the same. I cannot make sense of the Holocaust by taking it to be God's will. Even if I could accept the death of an innocent individual now and then without having to rethink all of my beliefs, the Holocaust represents too many deaths, too much evidence against the view that God is in charge and he has his reasons. I have to believe that the Holocaust was at least as much of an offense to God's moral order as it is to mine, or how can I respect God as a source of moral guidance? Why do bad things happen to good people? 2. Why did 6 million Jews and several million other innocent victims die in Hitler's death camps? Who was responsible? We fall back on the idea of human freedom to choose. Man, we discovered, is that unique creature whose behavior is not programmed. He is free to choose to be good, which means he must be free to choose to be evil. Some good people are good on a relatively modest scale. They are charitable, they visit the sick, they help a neighbor change a flat tire. Others are good on a grander scale. They work diligently to discover a cure for a disease, or they fight for the extension of the rights of the poor and the powerless. Some bad people choose evil, but have the capacity to be evil only on a small scale. They lie, cheat, take things that do not belong to them. And some have the ability to do harm to millions, even as their good counterparts have the ability to be helpful to millions. Hitler must have been one of those rare geniuses of evil who, having chosen to be destructive, had the ability to be more destructive than virtually anyone else in history. This raises a question which is not really part of our discussion. Can we say that someone like Hitler chose to be destructive? Or would we have to go back and look at his parents, his home environment, his teachers, his early life experiences, and historical circumstances that made him become the person he was? There is probably no clear answer to that question. Why do bad things happen to good people? 3. Social scientists have been debating it for years and will continue to do so. I can only say that the cornerstone of my religious outlook is the belief that human beings are free to choose the direction their life will take. Granted, some children are born with physical or mental capacities which limit their freedom of choice. Not everyone can choose to be an opera singer, a surgeon, or a professional athlete. Granted further that some parents mishandle their children badly, that accidental events, wars, illnesses, traumatize children so badly that they may not be able to do something they would otherwise be qualified for, and that some people are so addicted to habits that it is hard to speak of them as being free. But I will insist that every adult, no matter how unfortunate a childhood he had or how habit-ridden he may be, is free to make choices about his life. If we are not free, if we are bound by circumstances and experiences, then we are no different from the animal who is bound by instinct. To say of Hitler, to say of any criminal, that he did not choose to be bad, but was a victim of his upbringing, is to make all morality, all discussion of right and wrong impossible. It leaves unanswered the question of why people in similar circumstances did not all become Hitlers. But worse, to say it is not his fault, he was not free to choose, is to rob a person of his humanity and reduce him to the level of an animal who is similarly not free to choose between right and wrong. Why do bad things happen to good people? 4. The Holocaust happened because Hitler was a demented evil genius who chose to do harm on a massive scale. But he did not cause it alone. Hitler was only one man, and even his ability to do evil was limited. The Holocaust happened because thousands of others could be persuaded to join him in his madness, and millions of others permitted themselves to be frightened or shamed into cooperating. It happened because angry, frustrated people were willing to vent their anger and frustration on innocent victims as soon as someone encouraged them to do so. It happened because Hitler was able to persuade lawyers to forget their commitment to justice and doctors to violate their oaths. And it happened because democratic governments were unwilling to summon their people to stand up to Hitler as long as their own interests were not yet at stake. Where was God while all this was going on? Why did he not intervene to stop it? Why didn't he strike Hitler dead in 1939 and spare millions of lives and untold suffering? Or why didn't he send an earthquake to demolish the gas chambers? Where was God? I have to believe, with Dorothy Zerle, that he was with the victims and not with the murderers, but that he does not control man's choosing between good and evil. I have to believe that the tears and prayers of the victims aroused God's compassion, but having given man freedom to choose, including the freedom to choose to hurt his neighbor, there was nothing God could do to prevent it. Christianity introduced the world to the idea of a God who suffers, alongside the image of a God who creates and commands. Post-biblical Judaism also occasionally spoke of a God who suffers, a God who is made homeless and goes into exile along with his exiled people, a God who weeps when he sees what some of his children are doing to others of his children. Why do bad things happen to good people? 5. I don't know what it means for God to suffer. I don't believe that God is a person like me, with real eyes and real tear ducts to cry, and real nerve endings to feel pain. But I would like to think that the anguish I feel when I read of the sufferings of innocent people reflects God's anguish and God's compassion, even if his way of feeling pain is different from ours. I would like to think that he is the source of my being able to feel sympathy and outrage, and that he and I are on the same side when we stand with the victim against those who would hurt him. The last word, appropriately, comes from a survivor of Auschwitz. It never occurred to me to question God's doings or lack of doings while I was an inmate of Auschwitz, although of course I understand others did. I was no less or no more religious because of what the Nazis did to us, and I believe my faith in God was not undermined in the least. It never occurred to me to associate the calamity we were experiencing with God, to blame him or to believe in him less or cease believing in him at all because he didn't come to our aid. God doesn't owe us that, or anything. We owe our lives to him. If someone believes God is responsible for the death of 6 million because he didn't somehow do something to save them, he's got his thinking reversed. We owe God our lives for the few or many years we live, and we have the duty to worship him and do as he commands us. That's what we're here on earth for, to be in God's service, to do God's bidding.